They reached Jericho, and as he left Jericho with his disciples and a large crowd, Bartimaeus, that is the son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting at the side of the road. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout and to say, "Son of David, Jesus, have pity on me." And many of them scolded him and told him to keep quiet. But he only shouted all the louder, "Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him here." So they called to the blind man. "Courage," they said. "Get up, he is calling you." So throwing off his cloak, he jumped up and went to Jesus. Then Jesus spoke. "What do you want me to do for you?" "Rabboni," the blind man said to him. "Master, let me see again." Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has saved you." And immediately his sight returned, and he followed him along the road. A very familiar piece of scripture, but one which reveals a great deal when we sit quietly contemplating it in prayer. The busy Jesus is going along the road, and the crowds are flocking round him. And he comes to some kind of intersection or something, and here's this blind man with his cloak wrapped round him, sitting on the side of the road begging. He hears the noise and probably says what's happening, what's going on, and someone tells him. And so he starts calling out. He uses the words that a condemned person uses in the face of an executioner. "Have pity on me. Have pity on me." The disciples do what they always do. They try to shush him up and get rid of this nuisance person who's making a fuss. But Jesus hears what's going on and instructs his disciples, "Bring him here." The disciples tell Bartimaeus to have courage. Not quite sure why he'd need to have courage. It's interesting that the people in Mark's time would have known that the name Bartimaeus, as well as meaning son of Timaeus, they would know that the word Timaeus means honour. So he hears this very kind of two-sided figure. He's a person who's had honour, and yet he's blind and he's begging. He was once able to see because he says to Jesus, "I want to see again." So there's this kind of mixed element in the story. Anyway, Bartimaeus throws off his cloak, all he has probably, the only possessions in the world, and he rushes over to Jesus. And then Jesus has a real intimate conversation with him. He looks at Bartimaeus and he says, "What do you want?" And Bartimaeus in that moment knows who Jesus is and knows what can happen. And he addresses Jesus as Rabboni or Master. He senses the power in him. And he says, "I want to see again." Jesus heals and Bartimaeus sees again. He sees not only at the level of his physical eyes, he sees at the level of his heart that this is the man who can lead him to God. This is the Son of God. And what does he do? He doesn't go home and have a party with his mates. He leaves everything and he follows Jesus. Such a contrast to the rich young man in the story we had, was it last week or the week before, where he couldn't leave everything to follow Jesus. And Jesus looked at him and was sad. It's a wonderful story for us to reflect on. I wonder if you and I have that same trust that Bartimaeus had. When we experience the call of Jesus to be brought to him, it can come through other people in our lives or through circumstances. Some of those circumstances may not be good ones. Bartimaeus sitting begging on the road wasn't good. But it was an opportunity for him to meet Jesus. And that's what we're being called to recognise. And when we are face to face with Jesus, we need to throw off our self-sufficiency, our willingness to kind of run our own lives and let Jesus in. And Jesus will invite us to follow. And we have a choice to make. So let's during this week think about our choices, open our eyes to where Jesus is, and listen with our hearts to his call, that we may be healed and called to follow more surely.